Wings at Dusk, Confessions by Curtain Call. My name is Lionel and I make chaos look rehearsed. I'm the stage manager at a downtown theater that used to be a vaudeville palace and now sells sincerity with good lighting. On paper I call cues, herd actors, soothe directors, file reports the producers don't read unless something's on fire. In practice I translate appetite. A playwright wants time to be obedient. The audience wants to be forgiven for believing. Actors want the room to love them without needing an exit. I carry a stopwatch that lies less than most men, a pencil I sharpen like a prayer, a roll of spiked tape that tells furniture where memory lives. If you squint at my prompt book, you can see a city learning to arrive on time. I live with Amir. He builds costumes like confessions, French seams, soft closures, all the ways a body asks for mercy. He comes home with pins in his shirt and patience in his mouth, and will measure my shoulder as if tomorrow were a garment we might ruin together. We keep a rule on an index card under a magnet shaped like a theater mask. Say it by half hour. We wrote it after a winter when midnight honesty only taught us to lie in better lighting. Half hour is graceless. We love it for not pretending. The Thursday the rigging behaved and I didn't. Previews ran like a bruise you decide to admire. A rain effect had been upgraded to less lawsuit, more weather. The understudy knew half the lines and all the meaning, and a critic with a carnivorous pen was rumored to have purchased a ticket under a name that used to be a verb. At 7:26 p.m., 4 minutes before the half, my phone buzzed with the joint email Amir and I use for deliveries and unflattering clarity. Thank you for your stay, the Roebling. Time, 12:083:02. Points, 200 added. The magnet in my chest turned to face true north. Half hour sat on my sternum and asked whether I'd found my courage. I didn't call him. Our second rule covers everything not yet a disaster, 2 loops around the block before nomming it. My loop is the catwalk that runs the length of the auditorium, steel grating, dust that remembers jokes, a view of empty seats rehearsing forgiveness. I walked it twice. The ghost light hummed its one note, you already know. The house manager whispered that a cellist had been seen kissing the trumpet player. I said good, they need breath support. I filled my pockets with paperclips and bravado, and went back to headset. He arrived at my calling desk like a rumor that had finally learned manners. Cass, he said, and his badge said Cashin Mercer, producing consultant, which is a job invented by people who want to own applause without paying for rehearsal. He had a suit that made backstage look like a lobby and a smile that practiced being bad news kindly. I'm shadowing to help shepherd the donors on opening, he added, as if the word shepherd were not the problem. He watched me call the top of show, with the attentiveness of someone choosing a team. You call clean, he said during applause, leaning in like a secret. You keep time like it owes you rent. It does, I said. Drink after, he asked. His hand brushed my wrist the way you test whether power is actually off. Amir texted from the workroom photo of a bodice that finally stopped fighting. I'll be late. The leading lady learned shoulders are political. Half hour, I replied with a heart and a spool of thread. It felt like an IOU. The Roebling bar is designed to make bad decisions look upholstered. Cass sat in a corner under a lamp that believed in cheekbones. He asked what it's like to make an audience breathe together, and I told him it's a con. You trick their ribs into agreeing. He touched the back of my hand with 2 fingers, found the line where pulse becomes grammar, and asked, without asking, here. I said now, stupid and accurate, and the elevator behaved like a discreet understudy. His room smelled like citrus and the kind of carpet that forgives receipts. He kissed like a man who'd cast himself too carefully and finally got reckless. He pressed me against the window, and the city ignored us with great professionalism. He was generous in the practice places, selfish where a mouth reminds a man he's alive. I put my hands where agreements live. We left the lamp on because daylight had been added to the terms the second I stepped off headset. After, he lay on his back and looked at the ceiling sprinkler like it might choose drama. "You'll forgive him," he said, meaning Amir, meaning stability with pins. "I'll speak by half hour," I said, and Cass smiled like the donor list had come in above goal. Amir was still at the shop when I got home, muslin draped like a patient, steam rising from an iron that believes in redemption. At half hour we stood by the mask magnet and I said hotel, elevator, mouth, hands, yes. I didn't say Cass because names become props. He listened the way tailors do with fingertips. "Do you love him?" he asked, no theater in it. "I love the part of me that stops calling cues," I said. He nodded, took the Sharpie, and wrote under our rule in precise capitals, "No rooms we can't name at this table. If anything breaks, we break it before curtain in front of each other." He kissed me like blocking and went back to pleats. Cass did not leave it as an incident. Men whose job is narrative rarely do. He hovered at my desk with a practiced respect for headsets, slid ideas across the console like tips. He sent a photo of the ghost light with the caption "proof," which made me want to unplug electricity. He charmed a trustee in the lobby and then rearranged a donor seating chart as if proximity to art were math you do in your head. He learned the names of my crew and said them in a way that would have been kindness if he'd meant it only for them. The gossip column that feeds critics and understudies published a grainy elevator still from the Roebling. My shoulder, his mouth, a caption that used the word notes like an alibi. Amir didn't forward it. He printed it, taped it inside the wardrobe cabinet where we keep bias tape, then at half hour replaced it with a list of measurements. This is how he chooses to stay, by being necessary. Props love us, and the city loves symmetry. The Roebling called to say housekeeping had found a ring in a suite attached to my loyalty number, thin gold, engraved C+L inside like arithmetic that wanted a god. Not mine. I told the clerk to hold for owner and went to cue Act 2. Cass arrived between scenes with the kind of timing that convinces actors they are in good hands. He slid the ring onto his finger while looking at me as if applause were a mirror. "You're precise," he murmured. "I prefer accurate," I said, and called a blackout I did not want to explain. Work tried to pull me back to the honest mistakes. The rain pipe burped once like a drunk and soaked row G. The understudy finally missed a cue he'd been flirting with missing for days. A fly line needed hands, so I put down the headset and lifted like a human. Cass sent a message I didn't read. Amir left a pin cushion by my keys with a note, "For keeping things in place that want to wander." Then the recorder turned up, because stories like ours want you to think you're the genre and not the practice. The sound engineer found a lav mic taped under the green room bench, its tiny red light a confession. It had recorded 2 nights of pre-show murmurs, nerves in human pitch. Security peeled it up with a putty knife and inventoried it with the solemnity of men who have learned how often they are wrong. The sticker on the battery pack belonged to an outside engagement consultant the producers had hired to make the lobby feel less like waiting. I recognized the firm. Cass had name-dropped its founder while untying an anecdote. At half hour I told Amir about the recorder and the ring and the photo. He brewed coffee like something that could hold us and asked whether I wanted the story or the life. "I want the life," I said, which was the first line all week that didn't sound like a cue. He put his hand around my throat with the kind of pressure that is a question and said, "Here." I said, "Now," and remembered why people risk opening nights. Cass tried a finale with a critic's timing. He cornered me in the stage right vom between cues with a smile that claimed to be gentle. "Say my name," he said, as if that were legally binding. I said Cashin, and then because I am the person who owns calling places, I added exit. He laughed soft, pocketed the ring, and said, "You'll be bored." "I am never bored," I said. "I run sound cues for rain." The recorder mess resolved like real life, boring and expensive. The consultant was fired with a statement that used the word values twice. Legal sent a memo that managed not to threaten anyone and still made the building more polite. We put a small sign in the green room that says consent is not implied, and a larger one by the stage door that reminds kindness where to stand. Cass went quiet and then loud in other people's lobbies. A man named Carter, who donates without insisting on nomming rights, collected the ring at the Roebling and thanked the front desk for professionalism. He glanced at me over a hedge of very tasteful flowers and nodded like we'd been introduced by a better decade. If you want the erotics witnessed, I'll tell you what the ghost light already knows. There was a wall, a yes hands where we agreed they'd be, a mouth that believed in the moment more than the man. We left the lamp on because daylight had become part of the bargain, an audience that refused to comp its ticket. It was heat without metaphor, bodies working honestly, a room that learned our noise and held it without fuss. If you want the intrigue plated, I can serve you ring with arithmetic, recorder with ambitions, an elevator that thinks it writes reviews, and a theater that forgives everything except being boring. If you want neat closure, see me after opening night. I might have a prop coffin you can climb into if you insist. We made it to opening. The critic did attend and pretended to be kinder than usual. Our leading lady decided the show's thesis during bows and sold it to the balcony. Amir sat house left in a seat I could always find with one eye. He wore a jacket he'd taken in himself and clapped with a seamstress's accuracy. After the curtain, he found me backstage and kissed my cheek like a stage direction that reads, "Gentle True." We went home. He wrote another line on our card in tiny letters only people who thread needles can pull off. "If you burn something, do it where I can see and help find water." We didn't laminate it. Paper needs to breathe to remember. The next afternoon, I climbed the catwalk and looked down at a set that had pretended to be a family and then become one for 2 hours. I listened to the air the audience had left behind and felt the building decide to keep being a theater. Cass crossed my mind like a note you're not calling anymore. He will find another room that wants his weather. I have spiked tape and a pencil and a stopwatch that only lies when I ask it to. For a few hours at a time, people in good clothes cry in the dark together, and I tell lights and sound and bodies when to arrive so belief doesn't have to improvise. At half-hour, I say the thing in a kitchen with pins and coffee, and a man who can take in a jacket without taking anything from me I didn't plan to give. Then I put on my headset, call places, and do the job. Make chaos look rehearsed until the bow.